Now, Trevor Mallard is being sued for his actions during the Parliament protests in Wellington. A girl who was 11 years old at the time of the protests claims that Mallard blasting songs like Let It Go and Baby Shark while soaking her with water guns and sprinklers on Parliament's lawn caused mental anguish, humiliation and dehumanisation. Tudor Clee is the lawyer taking the case and is with us this morning. Tudor, good morning.
Good morning.
Is this a serious case?
Yes, absolutely. I think we have to remember that at the time there was obviously a lot of divisiveness about the COVID response, and perhaps people looked at what was happening in a different way at the time. But blasting somebody with music is actually a military-style torture technique that's been banned in Europe for over 50 years and has only otherwise been used recently in Guantanamo Bay by the Americans. So it's actually a case that this is the first time that this military-style technique was intentionally used on children.
Right. I mean, look,
I'm no fan. 1993.
I'm no fan of what Trevor Mallard did by any stretch. I think he made the bad situation worse. But you can't compare it to Guantanamo Bay. I mean, surely.
Well, I'm saying obviously it operates on a scale, but ultimately the use of the loud and repetitive sounds on people, particularly children, is recognized globally by the United Nations and by the Europeans as being illegal. So there's obviously a scale, Ryan, but there comes a point of saying at what level is that scale acceptable in New Zealand, and is this something we want to see again?
What about the people who'll say, oh, look, this is just a bunch of, I don't know, potentially people who didn't like the mandates or didn't like the COVID restrictions, who are trying to get back at, cobbled some money together, got themselves a lawyer. What do you say to those people who no doubt will be out there thinking perhaps that this morning?
Well, that's the problem with people who didn't have a problem with this being done to people they disagreed with, but I'm sure they'd have a completely different opinion if it was protesters that they agreed with being treated this way. We have to also remember that the messages that were released this morning by the Herald showed that the police were actually in danger as well by what was happening. So it's not just a matter of ensuring protesters are safe, but I think it generally a safe environment for the protesters and the public.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to it, Ryan.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the Herald story this morning. Tudor, really appreciate your time for explaining that to us this morning. Tudor Clee, who's the lawyer for this 11-year-old girl at the time of the protest, who's taking the case to the High Court. And by the way, if it progresses through the courts, it will be us, the taxpayer, who funds it through the current Speaker's office, because the actions were taken by Trevor Mallard when he was Speaker of the House. Now, the Herald story, which I do encourage everyone to go and read today, because it's got all of the juicy OIA receipts on what was going on between Trevor and police at the time of the protests. So this is while everyone's, on the lawn of Parliament. So Richard Chambers, who's the current police commissioner, but was the assistant commissioner at the time, he recorded in his little operation log about Mallard saying he's become increasingly frustrated and decided to make life as uncomfortable for the protesters as possible. Chambers' records show that he told Mallard by phone the move will be perceived as a police tactic, but Mr. Speaker says we can address in the media that this is his decision. Also pointed out to Trevor that they are likely to damage the sprinkler system. Now, the damage ended up costing $3,000, lawn repairs $114,000. They again implored the Speaker to stop and to not go ahead with the music and with the sprinklers, and Trevor did it anyway. They then appealed to Poto Williams, who was the police minister at the time, you'll remember, and tried to get her to call Trevor off. She couldn't or wouldn't, and it continued, and so on and so on. And the interesting part of these OIA revelations is the fact that police worried it would not only make this bad situation worse, but potentially put police at risk if it continued, and yet it did.